everybody, and welcome to Chapter 18. In Chapter 18, we're going to talk about people that make their own products to sell, called manufacturing companies. Towards the latter part of the chapter, we will see formulas that we learned through the chapter applied to service and merchandising businesses as well, which they're good for that, getting you cost per service and cost per unit purchased, right? And we'll see that Smart Touch Learning can actually manufacture the tablets they've been buying for $350 a piece. They can make them for $300. So this is the classic make versus buy decision that many businesses face. Of course, when you decide to make, you have to have a plant and the people and the machinery and all of those plant assets and people to work on them and people to fix them. So there's other costs involved, but this is a significant savings. So I'm sure the managers of Smart Touch would seriously consider doing this rather than purchasing them, because it could be a huge cost savings moving forward. So a lot of companies face this decision all the time. So I want to give you just a few highlights from the chapter. It's a pretty easy chapter. There's one little piece that's difficult, and I focus on that in the next video, okay, called the schedule of cost. Now I can't even think of it. Schedule of cost of goods manufactured. I'll get to that. So first of all, in the first couple of pages, 900 to wrong page, 960 to 965. It basically explains the difference between managerial accounting and financial accounting, which we've been doing the entire time for the first 17 chapters. It highlights some of the differences. If you're looking at your slides, it's 18.5 through 18.14. And I'm just going to pick out a couple of little pieces. The first one is the major difference. With managerial, it focuses on providing information for internal users, mainly managers, okay, so that they can make better decisions about where the company is operational-wise, in the competitive environment, versus the industry. Where would they like to go? How can they improve? But the thing about managerial accounting, sometimes called cost accounting, you need the financial statements. Everything comes from those financial statements. Even in the world of finance, if you take a finance class and you start learning all those lovely formulas, you're going to find that these numbers come from financial accounting. Everything comes from the numbers that we create as financial accountants by analyzing transactions, recording them in the journal, making our financial statements. Everything comes from that. All finance, the stock market, all the ratios, it all comes from the financial statements. So that's kind of the basis of everything. So the financial accountants what we've been practicing focuses on the external decision makers. Not that managers aren't interested, they are, but the external decision makers like investors. Do we want to invest in your company? We're going to look at your financial statements and do some ratios and see how you're doing, okay? Also, government agencies like the IRS, the state you operate in, regulatory, we call that the regulatory environment. You have to report, you have to pay your taxes. They're very interested in your financial statements. And vendors, people that you buy from, customers, people you sell to, even employees, because they want to know if they're working for a good company, a company that's going to be around for a while. So these external users have access to look at your financial statements, especially if you're publicly traded. They have to be posted online. If you're privately held, not so much. If you're not, then you kind of have to guess how you're doing, right? They can't just say, I want to see your financial statements, but the IRS can see them, If you go to a bank for a loan, they're going to ask you for them. So there are certain agencies that can see them. Okay. Even some vendors, big vendors, want to see your last 2 or 3 years before they sell to you, believe it or not, because they want their money. So that's a couple of big differences. Just wanted to highlight this briefly. Talks about manager's role in the organization. You can just read through that. And some of the functions that managers doing, like planning, directing, controlling, monitoring, all that stuff. I'm going to kind of skip over that. Not that it's not important, but what I thought was kind of funny on page 964, let me see the slide number, slide 1811. If I can get to 1811. It's kind of funny because this is the Pathways Vision model, and it's the same figure that we see all the way back in chapter 1 and page 2. The same thing with the, how accounting kind of changes the world, basically. If you look, what we think of accounting as being is in kind of the reddish pink color, and what accounting really is in the blue color. That leads to a better, good decisions, better community, better economy, all of that. And they might be overstating it just a wee bit, but it is actually, if you think about it, in totality true. It does make information available to the people that can utilize it the best and make better decisions for everybody. So it's interesting, and this isn't the only accounting book that I've seen the Pathways Vision model in. It's just about in every one. It's just funny, this one has it twice, at the beginning of the book and at the end of the book, just in case you forgot the first one. Okay, so enough about that. What kind of is the meat of the chapter is coming up, 966 through 970, slide 16 through 24, 1816 through 1824. And the title of this section is How Costs Are Classified. There's a few ways. Okay. I'm on 16 now. I keep forgetting to switch this around. Okay. They talk about the 3 types of businesses that we studied. And basically, they're the 3 types of businesses that exist. The service business that we had in chapters 1 through 4 in Accounting 101. The merchandising business, who sells things, they don't make anything, like Walmart. Bite my tongue, Target. I'm not a Walmart lover. Anyway, I might have mentioned that once or twice. That's chapters 6 through the end of 101, chapter 11, the merchandising business. We've even seen some in Accounting 102. But 102 basically focused on corporations. But those were merchandising businesses as well. So kind of went right through chapter 17 with the merchandising business. We haven't seen any manufacturing yet until chapters 18 and the next one, the last one, 21. Manufacturing uses labor, equipment, right? All their raw materials, their people to manufacture goods and then sell them. So all they're buying is what they need to make the product. So they're going to convert that into finished goods. So naturally they save the most complicated type of business for the last. But it is not real difficult because, again, we're not delving very deeply into the processes. We're basically doing an overview, especially in this chapter, and even in the next chapter, it's mostly formula driven. Pretty easy as well. So a major difference, there's a couple of major differences in manufacturing businesses. 3 kinds of inventory. We just don't have nice, pretty, finished stuff that can go out, right, that you bought. We have to make it, so we have raw materials inventory. We have work that's being done, so we call that work in process inventory. And then we have the ones that are done, ready to be sold. We call those finished goods. So you're going to see on the balance sheet, inventory is in 3 pieces. Those 3 pieces will equal the total inventory. Huh? And that's on page 906. So the next thing they talk about in this section, and this is on 907. Let me catch up with myself. Direct and indirect costs. This is kind of critical to understanding how we classify what is a direct cost versus an indirect cost. Okay, pretty easy also if you think of it just in the most simplistic terms. A direct cost is a cost that's traceable to a product or service easily. Anything can be traceable if you got all the time and money in the world, but easily and not too expensively traced to a product. For instance, let me think, I wish I had an example. I'll think of one. For Smart Touch, making the tablets, a direct cost would be the person loading maybe the lithium batteries. That would be a direct traceable cost. Their labor and the cost of that battery would be direct materials and direct labor. You can trace it easily. It's easily documented. So that direct cost, right, would be easily traced to a product or a service. The next kind would be the indirect, not easily traceable to a particular product or service. I think of the old book we had, and in this chapter, the company, it wasn't Smart Touch. It was Smart Touch, but it wasn't Smart Touch in this chapter. It was a guitar company. They made guitars. And they had the direct materials and direct labor, the wood and the strings and the people that worked on them. The indirect were the glue and the nails. That was a very good example. This doesn't have such great, it has some, but I keep thinking about that guitar picture with the glues and the nails on the side. If something is inexpensive, right, and not intricate in the design of the product, for a tablet, I can't think of what that would be, because I don't think tablets have glue. I could be wrong. But perhaps the plastic you wrap it in would be an indirect. If it's an indirect material, right, that would be sort of not, definitely cost is a thing, not too expensive, and you can spread indirect materials over the cost of all the products you make. So that's not, you don't have to, but it's not as easily traceable to a particular product or service. Okay, so that's the difference between direct. Traceable versus and indirect, not traceable. Anything that, and they call this object that you want to have a cost for, an easy one, a cost object. A cost object could be any product you make or any service you provide. That could be the cost object. That a manager wants to know the cost of making or servicing. Okay, a product being manufactured, a service being provided. Okay, I do have, let me see. I wrote glue and nails for indirect materials. I cannot get those guitars out of my head. We have direct labor, the people that directly hands-on produce the product. And then we have indirect labor. Who would that be? Well, anybody that doesn't have their hands directly on the product, like maybe the bosses, the managers, maintenance people, okay, like janitors or people that fix the machines or whatever. That would be indirect labor. You need them, but they don't have their hands making the product, right? That's the difference. Another important thing to remember, anything indirect goes into overhead. There's another category called factory overhead, or just overhead. They like to call it factory overhead. Different books call it different things. Anything indirect, materials or labor, goes into factory overhead. But there's also another piece of it, if that wasn't confusing enough. It's actual expenses of the factory, like rent, utilities, what else? Depreciation on the equipment, insurance, salaries for the managers of the line people making the products, right? All would be overhead, all classified into factory overhead. So, there's a Venn diagram. In case you don't know what a Venn diagram is, take a look at page 969, slide 21. For some reason, my slide 21 isn't where it's supposed. Oh, there it is. It's prime and conversion costs. The Venn diagram is an intersecting, looks like two eggs that meet in the middle. Prime costs are direct costs of materials and labor, all direct, the first egg, so to speak, in the dark shaded. Let me see what color it is when I look on page 969. It's the blue. Prime costs, direct materials and direct labor. Notice direct labor is green, and that green, if you're looking at your book on 969 right at the top, the conversion cost, the second egg, it's yellow, manufacturing overhead, right? Conversion means it's converted into the finished good. You can see direct labor has a foot in both worlds, basically. They have a foot in the prime cost, which is they fool around with the direct materials, for lack of a better term. They take the direct materials and turn them into finished goods. And that's why that green shaded area, the direct labor, goes into both eggs, so to speak. I don't know how, or ovals. So they're a part of the prime cost and they're part of the conversion cost because they make finished goods out of it. Okay. And next we have, I got papers all over the place, product versus period costs. And that's on the same page, 969. I don't know what happened to me. Here we go. Okay. Includes the cost of making the product cost, direct materials, direct labor, and factory overhead, sometimes called manufacturing overhead or just overhead. And they're not very consistent, so just watch out for the word overhead. And then period costs are not manufacturing costs, okay? That would be all the selling and administrative expenses, such as insurance, taxes, things like that, right? Rent on the plant, all of those things. Period costs. You got to pay them anyway, whether you make one or a million, okay? Non-manufacturing costs are called period costs. Okay, there is a nice exhibit on the bottom of 969, period versus product cost. You can check that out. Okay, a couple of more things I wanted to tell you, and then we're going to be all set. There's actually a diagram that looks a lot like I think your first homework problem on Exhibit 18A, page 970. And if you're looking at your slides, it's slide 24. I believe you have a homework problem that you have to put those little X's, whether it's period or product cost, or whether it's selling and administrative and period cost, or if it's a product cost, if it's direct materials, direct labor, or overhead. Remember, overhead is anything indirect as well. So that, I believe it's your first exercise. So check this out for reference on that. And then on page 9, the next section I'm not going to spend a lot of time on, but from 971 to 975, slides 26 through 38, we see the financial statements of a manufacturing company. And that is balance sheet on 971, showing the 3 types of inventory. It's nice. It has the service company, and then in the middle, the merchandising, and the last one is the manufacturing. And it does that for the income statement as well. So it kind of shows you how we went from service businesses to merchandising businesses to manufacturing. And anything that changed is in blue, so it's very easy to see. So I'll let you look that over. And the product costs flowing through the manufacturing company, as we just talked about what those were. How to calculate the cost of goods manufactured. I erased it. I had that up. I have to confess I do the writing one first. I know it's number 2, but I do it first so I can write ahead of time. And then I do 1 second. Little secret. It tells you how to kind of make one. The cost of goods manufacturing example, step 1, 2, and 3 is highlighted on 973 and 74. And you see smart touches at the bottom half of 974. And if you're looking at your slides, this is again in the financial statement section, and you do need the cost of goods manufactured to make an income statement for a manufacturing company. So let me get the finished one. Slide 35. I'm making a mess of my slides. They're falling all over the floor. I'm not going to worry about it right now. Okay, the step 1, 2, and 3, again, is on 974, direct materials used, and you're going to see that in your next video, how to make that. Then your direct labor and your overhead, and you total all 3 up. Start with beginning work in process, and then add in your 3 categories: direct materials used, direct labor, and all of the overhead. And then subtract your ending work in process to get the cost of goods manufactured. This will make more sense in the next video when I actually do an example of it with you. But you can look it over for how the steps in doing it. And then the last thing that I wanted to show you before we're done. You see the income statement for Smart Touch. They use that cost of goods manufactured, $660,000 on the income statement. Shows the flow of costs through the inventory accounts on 976. But on 976, I thought interesting to note, if you look at the bottom, and this is going to be in the next video too, they show you the unit cost per tablet for Smart Touch. The total cost of goods manufactured, as I just mentioned, was $660,000. They produced for the period 2,200 tablets, $300 a tablet. They made them for. Remember when they were buying them, they were $350, right? In actuality, when you calculate them using the formula, I think it comes out to $349 and change, but close enough. We always saw them bought for $350, and then they sold them for $500. Gross profit was $150 each. Gross profit could be $200 each if they continue making them. It shows you a check for cost of goods sold. They sold 2,000 tablets. Once you get the unit cost, you can double check your cost of goods sold. It's another way to get it. Times the $300 per unit it cost them to make is a $600,000. Yeah, $600,000. I was right. That didn't sound right. For the cost of goods sold, and of course that's right because we just saw it on the income statement on the last page. The total cost of goods sold is $600,000. So that's another check to make sure that that's correct. So the last section, the trends affecting, kind of brings in the service business for you, and this is like your lab problems. So it's the last 2 pages of the chapter. 978 and 9. What are business trends that are affecting managerial accounting? Shifts to a service economy, global competition, time-based competition. Though that's something I'll let you read up on. Total quality management is actually not old, not new. It comes from the 1950s from Japan, TQM. It's been around for a long time, but they're still talking about it in books like it's new. The value chain also comes from Japan, not new. The triple bottom line is pretty new. It's probably around a decade old. Adding value every step of the way. But what I wanted to really talk about is 980, the last page. How do we use it as it pertains to service or merchandising businesses? This is what you'll see, and it's very easy to do in your last two problems, which are the labs. You can get a cost per service too. And this is Smart Touch Learning. Again, it's all Smart Touch Learning. Let's assume before they started buying or making the tablets, if you remember back in chapters 1 through 4, they were a service business. So the total costs that they incurred in making the tablets, in providing the services, remember they did e-learning services and they trained people for their software and things like that. The total costs were $3,900. From that $3,900 that it cost them to provide the services, they provided 1,950 services. So that's how many services were provided for that money. So each service cost them $2, rounded. Okay? So that's important to know for service businesses. How much does each type of service cost? Managers need to know that, right? Very important. So they can keep the costs as low as possible for any type of business. And then there's also another calculation towards the bottom of the page. When they became a merchandising business in chapter 5, they started to buy tablets and get into the business of selling them. The total cost of goods sold for Smart Touch was $90,800 the first year they did that. Well, it wasn't the first year. This is the 2019, I think it's the second year they did that. And they sold 260 tablets, which doesn't seem like a lot for $90,800 cost of goods sold. But this is where that number comes up. Each unit cost was $349.23. And they always put $350 on all the cost of goods sold when we had it, way back when. Seemed like a long time ago when we had that. But it was actually $349.23, so they could save $49.23 per unit by manufacturing the tablets. Remember, that came up to $300. So there's a ton of these different ways and features you can do with small, easy-to-do formulas that managers can utilize for many, many, many things, and improvement of the business is definitely one of them. So, again, this supports their decision to manufacture. So I'm all done. Tried to make it brief. So check out the next video where I'm going to do a schedule of cost of goods manufactured as well as a unit cost. And let me know if you have any questions on anything in the chapter. I will see you next time for our very last chapter. Bye-bye.